mean, that's a thin laptop.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I've had it for 3 years or two. Yeah, 3 years now. So it's pretty old, but I love it because, like you said, it's so thin, so it allows me to have a thinner bag.
Yeah,
And you can
I have a pretty.
you
Oh,
can
so
do
yours does that? Yeah.
you can do the tent. You can turn it into a
So it's a touchpad
what do you call it? An iPad or a
tablet.
tablet.
Hmm.
Thank you. Yes, it's one of those.
I have a Dell that you can actually separate the screen from, and it turns into a tablet.
Does it okay? So it's not as heavy. Fantastic.
Awesome.
And my Ignite book is in my car because it's such a big book.
Okay, it is a big book. As you can see, I just brought what I needed out of it because I have the whole book too. Plus, I left it at home.
The thing is monstrous, so I'm gonna leave this here. Grab my book. Yeah, because I don't want to be able to grab. That's just so much to grab. And a pen. Yes. Why not? I'll be right back.
Okay,
Sorry
sounds
about
good.
that.
That's all right. Awesome. So we're on section 10.
Okay.
So now, how long have you had your license?
October 17th.
Okay. So you're new.
Yeah. New. Um, Typical having a hard time getting going. So I new to Georgetown, and I feel like I'm in good hands.
That you are. So where did you originally come from?
So I originally am from California, so I moved here to get into real estate because the market there is just so saturated and very competitive.
Yeah.
And Austin, from every which way you slice it and dice it, this is just the place to be
Hmm.
for real estate. So I was on board. I went from New Braunfels from my schooling, and then transferred my schooling to Pflugerville or Round Rock, and finished up my
Hmm.
schooling and got my license
Is that
in
Champion?
Champions,
Yeah.
correct.
Cool.
So then I went to Northwest, Keller Williams, and didn't really like the support I was getting, and it was just too competitive. There
Hmm.
was a phone call that I was making to a person, and they were liking everything I had to mention, and when I was setting up an appointment, they thought I was confirming an appointment that they had already set up with somebody, another
Oh wow.
agent. And then I realized how competitive it is there, because apparently that you're okay to do that until you actually get the listing.
Hmm.
So it's open for grabs.
Yeah, periodically we'll run into other Keller Williams agents. It's very rare that I ever run into one from the same office as me, the Georgetown office.
I just
But
didn't feel right, you know, saying, "Oh, let me schedule an appointment as well." You know, I know that person, or I don't know. It just
Yeah,
seems everybody here is more on the working as a team,
very much so.
which I like.
A lot of the office, just a little bit of history that you wouldn't know is, so a lot of us came from another company, and we didn't have a sales manager until, I mean, for years, until kind of towards the very end, and then we just kind of had a mass exodus. So we brought a lot of the environment of helping each other. We always asked each other, what questions do you have? Hey, how are you?
Hey, Sussex Night.
Come on
and
in.
Scott
Yes.
is amazing too.
Yes.
You know, he really knows his stuff with technology, and,
Yeah.
and that's really where the industry is going. So
Yeah.
I just bought into Scott, bought into the franchise, and just that's why I'm here.
Well, it's like Scott says, he may have mentioned this to you, that he's really trying to keep Georgetown kind of, he's trying to keep that small town feel within the office. And with Round Rock and Georgetown, both of those, because we've been in both offices, Scott has, I have been, a lot of us. And so we carry that contributing to helping everybody within. And, you know, we're not competing
No.
against each other.
Yep.
But
So it took a while to finally get here,
yeah, well, I'm glad you are.
and it's expensive every time.
Yes, real estate is
I
real
transferred
estate can be
3 times already.
a little expensive. Yeah, especially transferring. Well, welcome home.
Thank you.
And what's your name?
Kimberly.
Hi, Kimberly. I'm David Durham.
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Sam.
Sam. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Awesome.
Somebody.
So we're going to be on lesson 10 today.
Lesson 10. Okay.
And Kim, you've been in real estate how long?
Kimberly.
Kimberly.
Not long.
Not
I'm
long?
Candy's assistant and got my license the end of October. And I've been very busy with some other things in November, so I am now, boom.
Boom,
starting.
you're official.
Yeah. So.
Cool. So on 10, this is talking about negotiations. Sam, were you in the last class on make and receive offers?
Yes.
Okay. And Kimberly, you
Nope.
were not?
This is my first one.
Oh, this is your first one. Okay,
First class.
awesome. So we're just going to tag on to chapter 9, which was make and receive offers.
Okay.
And now we're going to talk about negotiating offers.
Okay.
So you guys feel free, just pipe in, ask questions. This is not a free for all, but it's close to it. So let's just, one of the things I want to let you guys know, you are always negotiating. If you've got kids, you've got a spouse, partner, whatever, you're always negotiating. When you go buy a car, you're negotiating. When you go to a store and if Lowe's has got this thing cheaper than Home Depot, you're negotiating with Home Depot to see if they'll at least match. So you're always negotiating, whether you know it or not.
Especially at the home life.
Yes, the home life, you are always negotiating.
Balance.
I have a 16-year-old, and yes, I'm always negotiating, and I've told him I think he would make a great lobbyist. So really the negotiation process, just the definition of it is, it's really just a give and take process for you guys to reach common ground, whether it's with your buyers, your sellers, the other agent. We're going to talk about all aspects of that for you guys to come to a mutual agreement. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch this video on the screen here.
You want the door open or closed?
Why don't you go ahead and close it for this?
Hi, I'm Josh Anderson from Nashville, Tennessee. I've been with Keller Williams since 2006. 2014, we did about 200 transactions for about $60 million in volume. I grew up on a farm, so I've always seen my dad negotiating land and cows and horses. Being the youngest of 4, and I'm trading and negotiating with my brothers all growing up. So I've kind of done it all the time. Some people are certainly gravitate toward it and are naturally better at it than others. But I tell you what they need or want, and then speaking to the other agent and finding out what's most important to their client. And there's some agents that just don't give in. When I have an agent that I'm dealing with that's very tight-lipped, I just keep asking questions, and they give me information that they might not have otherwise given, whether it's a divorce or a death, or it's just they got relocated to some other city. And I think if you're really listening and being intentional and purposeful about listening, you'll find out exactly what's important to them or what they have to have. In certain situations, you have to be creative. We're always looking for that next little tip to help our clients out and win the deals. One of the techniques that we've used a lot that's worked well for us is the escalation clause. For example, if the property is listed at $250,000, we might go in at $250,000 with strong terms, and in special stipulations, we might put in there that we're willing to beat the next best documented offer by $1,000 up to $263,000. And the best offer might be $261,000, so we end up getting it for $262,000. From a client standpoint, be willing to have a real conversation with your clients. It's not us just being realtors for them, it's us consulting and advising and really telling them, if you really want this property, here's what you have to do to get it. Everybody's got a different way of how they would negotiate. And networking with other Keller Williams agents around the country, the more you hear it, the more ideas you get. And then you end up gearing it towards you and what you think is going to work best for you and your clients. A lot of it comes down to experience, and I think the more deals you do, the more comfortable you get with it. If you step back from every transaction and learn something, you're going to get really good over time.
So, what did you guys take away? I mean, what really popped out to you guys on that?
Asking a lot of questions to the real estate agent, I thought
Mhm.
was, or not a lot of questions, but just asking questions in general to the real estate agent.
Yeah.
That was, you get some extra information.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. Kimberly, how about you?
Same thing. I mean, it's just, it's getting them to open up, getting them to feel comfortable. I think sometimes, depending on how you ask the questions, they might feel like you're intruding. So it's learning how to dialogue the questions so that you can get what you need to help them. They don't realize that,
Yeah.
you know, you need all the information to help them.
One of the things he talked about in this was the escalation clause, and we don't use that here. So that won't be anything that you guys will deal with. So if we have multiple offers, the agent will call you or email you and say, we now have multiple offers. Send your highest and best offer by Tuesday at 5 p.m. And then they'll review that with the sellers and whoever wins. And I mean, you can ask questions, definitely. One of the questions I just ask is, what is the seller looking for in an offer if I'm on the buyer side? I'm not saying that we're going to agree to that, but I'll ask that question. I just kind of start out with it. And usually they'll say, you know, they're looking for a 45-day close, or they're looking for this or that. And that way I have some basis to work with the buyer when they're making their offer. So.
Is it true that the buying agent is doing majority of the work, where the sales agent, this is what I keep getting a lot of feedback from a lot of the agents, that basically the listing agent doesn't really do anything, that you have to pretty much do all the work for the listing agent and as a buyer's agent?
I disagree with that, because yes, there are different roles. So yes, on the buyer's end, you are taking them out, you're instructing them on the process, you're advising them on homes as you're going into them.
But no, in terms of deadlines and things like that, you want following up with the agent, and they're completely clueless, and so you have to get things submitted on time and make sure that it's still moving forward, the deal's still moving forward, because the listing agent isn't really doing their job. They're pretty much putting it all on you.
Which is wrong. I will tell you flat out. It's wrong, because the listing agent, if they're working for their seller effectively, should also be checking with the buyer's mortgage company, checking with the title company, and making sure that things are moving along and not depending on the buyer's agent to give you all the answers. So that's the proper way to do that.
And so, just so you don't get caught up in that trap, what would you recommend? Do you just ask a lot of questions?
I ask a lot of questions. So, for
Make sure that they're
example,
on top of it.
my wife does a lot of my contract to close stuff, and so she'll send a lot of emails. We send an email out once a week to the loan officer, whether we're on the buyer's end or whether we're on the listing end, to find out how things go. Specific questions: have you ordered the appraisal? Have all the documents been signed and filled out, the loan application? And we're asking specific questions so that we know. Some loan officers will send you a weekly update without even having to ask. But you still want to do some follow-up. When is the appraisal coming in? Did the house appraise? Is there anything else that you need from the buyer to submit the loan to underwriting? And just asking those detailed questions. Sometimes I have to go to the title company and consider them consider them partners in your business. And if I don't feel like I'm getting the answers the way I should be, or I'm not getting a response, I'll have the title company, I'll say, will you do me a favor, will you call the mortgage company and find out where the loan is, what the status of it is? Because they're a neutral third party. And, I think sometimes I can get a little bit better answer. But we just once a week, we send that email out because we want documented evidence of it, of what's going on with the process. And then we're just, following up and asking questions. So really the buyer's agent and the listing agent should be almost double doing it with the loan officer and the title company. And when's your inspection ordered? Have you gotten it ordered, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer? Calling the agent, have the buyers gotten the inspection set up? So it really should be both parties, because together they're working to make this that win-win situation to get this to closing.
Yeah, it sounds like.
Now, do things fall apart at the end? Sometimes, yes. Something happens. Buyer goes out and buys a new car. Well, they shouldn't have bought any big ticket items while they're in the process. Things like that happen. Or a house doesn't appraise by $2,000, $5,000. Doesn't happen often.
Or something comes up on the title.
Title
and
or
need to
the
get a
inspection.
Quick claim
Yeah.
or something.
The inspection. Title, I don't typically have really any issues with. If there's anything, it might be that the buyer's got or the seller's got a judgment filed against them that they didn't tell the agents about. So then we find out that actually there is a judgment, but it's not that person, it's not that buyer, or it's not that seller. And then there's an affidavit signed at closing. It just says,
Okay.
this isn't my deal. This is not my judgment. So you'll have things, you'll work through them. There's a lot of work to it. It's a lot of paper pushing. Oh, there's a lot of paper pushing. Because you're just always, you're doing the CMA for the property, whether you're on the listing end or the buyer's end. You are negotiating that offer. You are, I'm going absolutely blank. Anyway, there is a lot of paperwork. When you have the inspection, you're writing up the amendment to ask the seller at the seller's expense to prepare anything, things like that. So anyway, and one of the things is asking not only questions of the other agent, what is your seller looking for if I'm on the buyer's end? Or if I'm on the listing end, then I may ask the question, let's say, and it's in here, I'll kind of touch on it now. The buyer wants closing cost paid for by the seller. And you're kind of trying to dive into that as the listing agent with the buyer's agent to say, what will happen if my sellers don't accept the closing cost portion of the offer? How will your buyers handle that? Well, they've got the money. You'd be real surprised. One of the things he says, besides asking lots of questions, is when you ask the questions, there's a lot of times that agents are not supposed to answer the questions because they're working for the buyer or they're working for the seller. And they shouldn't be answering some of the questions that are asked. Doesn't mean you can't ask for them. You can't ask. And you'll be real surprised. You ask the question and have a moment of pause. People don't like uncomfortableness. And it's pretty amazing what. So you have an idea when you're working with the seller or working with the buyer, you kind of already have a little bit of a roadmap based upon the information that you're finding out. So let's go to page 12. So a lot of these negotiation tips are going to be things that you're pretty familiar with. Be professional. I think that's kind of a given. Just remember the goal is to get a signed contract to make it a win-win with both parties and with the other agent. Control what you say to anyone involved in the transaction. So if someone's asking you a lot of detailed questions, you might say, just remember I work for the buyer, so I can't answer that particular question. Doesn't mean you can't ask the other party, because you can. Refer back to motivation. Remind your clients why they want to buy and sell. And periodically going over, you told me that you need to get moved in quick. Is that correct? And just reaffirming things through the process. Same thing with the other agent. Don't reveal too much. Listen more than talk.
Yeah, that's easier said than done, right?
It is, because people don't like silence. It can work to your advantage, big time. But we all have had an agent who will call up and want to make a lowball offer verbally, and let's say the house is $250 and they want to make an offer for $225, and the agent just calls up and says, "Hey, would you guys accept an offer for $225?" So I don't know. First of all, I need to talk to him, but second of all, we need to not do this verbally. We need to do this in writing, because there's a lot more than just the price. There's the closing time. There's closing costs if anybody's asking for them. So I want to have things in writing, but they're just kind of testing the waters, and I don't like to answer that question until I have everything in writing. And don't get attached to the outcome. Guys, you cannot believe agents get so wrapped up in these transactions. They'll kill them faster than anybody, because they're fighting for their client so hard that they're driving the other agent away, and it can really, you just can't get attached, and you got to be willing to walk away, and recommending maybe that your client walk away if you get into that situation. Any questions on that? Okay. So on page 13, so the points of negotiation obviously is the price. And if the seller has got multiple offers at the same price, it is the terms of those offers in addition to the buyer's financial position that will determine which one will win. So, multiple offers we've definitely been into for a number of years. I've seen that slow down a little bit because the interest rate's going up, and it's slowed things down just a little bit. I don't know what you've heard from other agents, what you've heard from Candy. I'm kind of enjoying this time of a little bit of, we're seeing prices come down just a tiny bit. It's not major. We've got a little bit more inventory than we've had. So I'm kind of enjoying it. for the fact that things have been so much multiple offers that now we have a little bit more chance of negotiating. Not big chunks off prices by any means, but we have a little bit more negotiating. Then we've
How
been
much
able to do.
inventory would you say is out in the market right now? About 13,000. Is that pretty accurate?
You know, I don't know the answer to that. I can tell you for Round Rock, it used to run probably about 400 to 500, maybe
I'm
600.
not talking about just with our ABOR or
That I don't know the answer to.
MLSI.
But on the MLS in Actress, there is the market statistics,
Should bring that up, right?
and it will bring that up.
It's curious. Is that you can that's a good statistic that you could show your buyer if they're hesitant on purchasing for whatever reason. You know,
Yeah.
they'll look at the trends right now.
And what's nice about going to that is that it's not you relaying the information, it's the MLS relaying
Right.
that information to them. So they, you know, you're given the source to them. Do you guys know how to get to the market stats? Have you ever seen that?
I've been playing around with it.
I haven't.
Let's do this.
There was what was it, Saturday? A $10 million property got listed.
Did it really?
Yeah. That's pretty crazy.
Okay, come on, computer.
That's a pretty nice commission. 3% of 10 million.
Is it here in Georgetown? Where is it?
I want to say it's right off of let's see, Central Austin, right by
Yeah, that would be more
Yeah.
Central Westlake.
Right
BK,
off the
Westlake,
water.
yeah.
yeah,
Sure,
beautiful
Westlake
view
Drive.
off the water.
Lake Travis, Lakeway. We'd have that. So the computer is thinking. So what we're going to do is go into the MLS when this updates. So you just log into the MLS, and then you'll notice on the dashboard here, over here, market stats.
Will let you know how many active agents there are too.
No, that's something that you would have to call Actress or Waycor. Waycor has on their roster, I want to say it's about 2,000 people, and I want to say Actress is probably 17,000, which is so different to me because when I got in 26 years ago, there was only about 6,000 to 7,000 of us.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out, is there more inventory than real estate agents, or it's pretty even, or is it?
I would say that there's more agents than there is inventory on that.
Wow.
Okay, so here we are in our stats, and so you can click on 2018 over here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that graph. Local market report. Please log in, but I am logged in. And these stats are extremely detailed. So you'll notice that this one right here, this is for Texas. So you want to just see what's going on for October 2018. Here it is. Let me.
Is that 83 billion? Yeah.
Yes, for year to date, 83 billion. So 6.8% increase. There's average price. And then as you scroll down, there's a lot to this. All kinds of graphs, maps. It then starts getting into county as you can see here, Travis County, Williams County. And then it starts going into MLS areas.
Mm.
So you can look at it per that way, or let's go back up and let's see what we can determine per Sam's question. Travis County, Bastrop. Texas. I'm looking for the Austin. I believe there's an Austin one. So Austin, Round Rock. So there's your stats right there. Active listings. Well, new listings, 39,157. Active listings, 7,460.
Okay, so that's 39,157 year to date.
That is correct.
Right.
So, but for the month of October, this is the number right here.
Wow.
Here's the thing. This number right here that you see,
Mm-hmm.
this 2.9, 2.5, is months of inventory. If it's 6 months or under, it's a buyer, it's a seller's market. If it takes 6 months and over, then
Late
it's
sellers.
then it's a buyer's market.
Oh, a buyer's market. Right.
So based upon supply and demand. So what this means is as of the time that this spreadsheet was done, if there is no other homes that came on the market, it would take 2.9 months to sell everything that's on the market. And that is a really good seller's market. So we'll start seeing these numbers adjust a little bit. It's not going to be major, but we'll see these numbers increase a little bit. So that'll give you an idea. You can see that it's broken down to new. This is all for new and existing. That goes down to existing here, new construction here. You get your days on the market here. So really our days on the market's running about 60.
So there's year to date to almost 3,000 for new construction.
For new construction, yes, and you got to be. There's actually a lot more houses than this out there for new. Not all home builders put all their inventory in.
Right, on MLS, which could be an advantage for you because then if you get with that builder, then you could have extra inventory to show a potential buyer that they don't
Yes,
have access
that's
to.
correct.
So it makes you valuable.
Yeah. So, and you can do that. Let me show you on your portal.
Oh, you can actually see them from here?
So if you want to go for things that are not in MLS, you want to do a more extensive search on new homes,
Mm-hmm.
there's these two links right here.
Nice.
And you can do your own searches. Here's what I want to let you know. Don't email these to your client, because what I have found out by starting to use these, because I've had some people looking at new homes lately,
They're just
and
using you. They're just using you.
no, what they're doing is if I fill in all of my my buyer's contact information, all of the builders have access to that information. They're data mining with this.
Mm-hmm.
So if I do anything, I send it to myself first, so that the builders only have my contact information.
Because you click on it and it asks for your info? Is that what it?
At some
In
point,
order
if
to
you're
get it
wanting
to-
to email it,
Okay,
just by logging in, to be honest,
got it.
it'll do it. So I learned, I just send it to myself, and then I forward the link to my clients.
Got it.
So that way the builders have my contact information and not the buyers. So that was a little sidetrack there, but hopefully you guys will find
No,
that
it's very informative.
find
Thank
that
you.
find that helpful. So you can go through all of this and just, there's so much information here on the MLS, and you can just start cruising through it. And FAQs, contract, matrix training. Have you guys taken your orientation for the MLS yet?
Mm-hmm.
You have.
I have not.
I didn't. Okay. anyway, they'll teach you more of the nitty gritty you already have learned and have been experimenting with some of it.
It was, oh God, what was her name? I still don't have an answer to this, but it was an ethics towards the end there was an ethics orientation where they go over what you can and cannot do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so funny because she had mentioned that when she shows an investor a property and then she starts liking the property herself, she has to disclose that to her buyer, right? You know, but how do you do that without what do you call it? Not blockbustering, but you know, ethically do that without.
Like you're pushing them to buy it.
Yeah, so if you're not going to buy it, I'm going to buy it, kind of thing. You know, ethically. She said she would do it, and had success with it, but she generally wanted to buy it if they weren't going to buy it.
Yeah, you're just upfront with it. You just say, you know, look, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer.
You just
I
say
really
how
like
many
this.
eyes in that room were like, is that ethical? Like, I don't know.
You
I
need
don't,
to disclose,
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to disclose.
right.
I mean, if you just go in and go put an
I think it's
offer
probably
on
the
it
way
after
it's
you showed the
said
buyer,
is whether it's ethical or not, but just, hey, it's a great deal,
yeah,
so therefore I'm interested.
Mm-hmm.
Just want you to know.
yeah. So no, that is totally kosher to do.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it is
Where are you
totally.
moving from?
He's from.
I'm
are
all
you not
over
from
it.
Texas?
I'm California to New
Okay.
Braunfels, New Braunfels to Austin.
Okay. Were you
So-
a realtor in California?
No,
Okay.
I was wanting to get into real estate, but not there, so I decided.
He realized that everybody has not only got a driver's license, they have a real estate license too. So if a
Yeah.
cop pulls you over, they say,
It comes with your
"Can I
driver's
see your
license."
driver's license or your real estate license?"
There you go.
Right.
My sister got her license in San Diego, and that was a joke apparently that they had. She had told me about it, and I was like, "Oh, so the cops just jokingly, you know, asked for your real estate license."
That's funny.
So it was pretty interesting. So back over on page 13, so we've price. You can back up the price with the stats that you have here. Let me show you one other thing. I just heard about this KW stats. I find this a little bit more simple to use than that, because that other stuff is so many numbers that a lot of your consumers are not going to understand. I have to tell you, I'm an agent. I love spreadsheets and I understand all those numbers. But let's do this. You put your MLS number. I heard someone in the office. I didn't know anything about this, and I overheard someone talking about it. So let's say you want to do Georgetown West. Oops. West. And then I actually, if I leave it like that, it messes it up. So I click on that one. Create report. View. Bam. Look at that. This is I really like this for the fact of it's just so much easier to read. So you can see in Georgetown West, your active days on the market in 2018 versus 2017, the days have gone up 12.5%. Median price, I have to tell you, I do not use median in anything. I always use the average. Because a lot of people, believe it or not, don't understand what median means.
Yeah.
It means the middle,
Mm-hmm.
where average is adding up, dividing by the number. So, but it gives you an idea of price per square footage. You know, that's nice to know, but it doesn't help the consumer much. And then sold price to original list price. So there's some really good stuff here. And you can do multiple MLS areas.
I wonder if Kelly will do that for you if you ask him for a snapshot.
Yeah, so the snapshot, yes, it will do that. I mainly use the snapshot if I'm in a subdivision and I go Kelly, give me a stat for the Woods subdivision in Round Rock. And it's getting, so this is local
For the
in-
city or the MLS area?
per the MLS area. Kelly can get it down even to subdivision because they're using some data from, they've got a deal with Nextdoor, that they're able to look at the map and say, okay, the Woods got these streets, I'll go search the MLS, and then it comes back with your stats. So hopefully you find that helpful.
Yeah.
So on common points, obviously the terms, will it be financed, you know, and what's the time for it to get closed? I'm on number 2. So on closing cost, again, this is where the buyer's asking the seller to pay a portion of the closing cost. And we do see that here. If you're on the buyer's end, you want to call the mortgage company up and say, what kind of closing cost? The buyers are saying they need their closing costs paid for. How much are you guesstimating or estimating that the closing costs are going to be? So that you can put that in paragraph 12A1B of the contract. Here's the foundation I want to get to in the negotiations is understanding the contract forwards and backwards. And being able to know, okay, so paragraph 12A1B is buyer's closing costs paid for by the seller. Paragraph 22, you know, and just knowing all those things.
What about being able to read a title report? Should I go to like a title company?
Yes, I would definitely, you know, find a title company that will go over a title commitment. There's Schedule A, B, and C. They're all important. I find C to be the most important. That's where the judgments may be listed, if there is any, or any tax liens or anything like that. So, again, this is when you are negotiating, whether you're on the buyer side or the seller side, just asking questions to the other agent. Talking to your buyer. What if the seller is not willing to pay your closing cost? How will you handle that? Well, we've got the money. We'd like them to pay for it. Okay, but just if. And kind of, so you're getting ahead of everything. You're trying to determine what's going on in the future if it happens. What's my game plan? Closing date, I will tell you here, typically I only see about 30 days. I don't see much over 30 days. If I do get an offer that's at like 45 or 60 days, which I very rarely do, I will ask my client to negotiate that down, because it gives too much time for someone to go out and buy a new car, new TV, and you may tell them don't buy any big ticket items.
They're still gonna do it.
They may still go out and do it. And then it affects the credit, which then affects their loan. So I like to keep it, the average, believe it or not, is about 22 days. Conveyance, this is on the front page of the contract, and it talks about the things that stay in the house. So anything that's attached to the house, drapes, curtains, valances, even the rods, ceiling fans, all of that's attached to the house, not pictures, not furniture.
The TV mounting.
The TV mounting, you're exactly right, is a conveyance because it's attached to the wall. So, whoa, sorry about that. That was my Tron music playing. So you'll see on the seller's disclosure what's staying and what's not, you know, if there's anything that's going to be excluded. You should see that on the seller's disclosure notice. Or you ask the agent, is there anything that the buyer or that the sellers want to keep? When I'm on the seller's end, I ask them if they want to keep it, go ahead and pull it down before we list the house. You want to take grandma's chandelier with you? Let's go ahead and pull it down and have you put one back up. Because I don't want it to be a point of contention because someone loves the house and that chandelier. So,
have you run through it with leased solar panels yet?
We have not. I know California deals with that a lot. I'm hearing a little bit, only through the grapevine, that Texas is only starting to deal with that.
My father just recently had to go through that with the builder, he purchased a property. They hadn't they haven't had any situations like that before where he didn't want the lease and they were pushing the lease on him.
Yeah, I'm sure they were.
And he's like, no, I want to buy it. I want to own it. It's like, what?
Yeah.
They didn't even know what to do.
Well, it's surprise for the California agents that get a house listed and they never ask the seller, are you leasing this solar system or do you own it? Because most of them, I think,
Right.
in California are leased.
So in that situation, let's say the seller does lease and they're stuck in their contract, and the buyer doesn't want to take over the lease or purchase them,
That's right.
and they want a discount. So in that circumstance, from my understanding, because the actual mount is the rack and the panels are leased, they would then just
They'll come and take the panels.
they just take the panels and leave the
all
rack
the racks.
that's attached to the roof.
Yeah.
Okay. Pretty.
It's a big, I understand it's a big deal in
It's
California.
Oh, Lord.
a parked car on your roof.
Yeah.
You know, do you want to purchase the car? Do you want to take the car? Because it's basically an
Yeah.
accessory at that point, and and it's an expensive one.
Wow. And
Yeah.
it's come into Texas?
I'm just hearing a little bit.
We're
just
seeing a
little
lot
bit.
of
Most
new
people-
builds
most
with
people
I
phone
see
towers.
them, yeah.
So
Most
it's
people
selling
own
one of
here.
those. Are they leased or did you
Yeah.
purchase?
Good
And
to
if
know.
you lease, then they're in a contract, and
That's right.
you got to figure out what's going
It's
on
like
with
an
that.
alarm system in a house. If it's on a 3-year contract, and the buyer sells that house and doesn't disclose,
Mhm.
if I said that right, and the buyer comes in and doesn't start paying, either the seller has to keep paying that for the remaining 3 years,
Right.
or the alarm company come take the alarm system out of the house.
See, that's so much easier to handle because we're talking maybe 2,000.
Yes,
We're
you're
talking
totally
like
right.
$40,000
Yes,
worth of
yeah,
decision making there.
totally. I mean, that can make or break a deal
Wow.
right there. So
And solar is starting to become very popular here in Texas, like
It
California.
is. It is. I'm in our neighborhood. I'm on the
That'll be interesting how that unfolds.
yeah. So earnest money, I will tell you, earnest money I typically see at about 1% of the sales price. So if it's $200,000 house, $2,000 earnest money.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say
I
200,000.
know. It's like, wow. Buying cash.
Yeah,
Not option money, earnest money.
earnest money. Option, what I do is I do $250 for 7 days.
$250
Mm-hmm.
for 7 days.
Yes, lot less than California. Because I understand California is a lot. Well, I think the earnest money is even more like 10%.
Oh, it's not that much, but it's 3%.
Okay.
And so.
And the option, depending on how your options work, it seems like there's a lot more money. So you ask 5 different agents in this office how they do things, what they think is the regular earnest money. There's not a standard. I'm just telling you what I see. And you ask them, how much do you put down for earnest money? Some of them will say, all I ever put down is $100.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's what I've seen when
Yeah.
I bought and sold
Yeah.
my own home.
Wow.
It's $100
But I do $250. There's
or $25 a day. I've seen that
There you
too.
go. When you're multiple offers, really, sometimes I've even had to bump the price up to like $500 because we want the seller to know we're serious. I mean, you're not gonna walk away from as easily a 500 as you are 250 as you are 100.
Exactly.
So,
Okay.
repairs, I will tell you on the repairs, I always negotiate with the buyer and or seller and their agent for money to be exchanged in lieu of repairs.
You said buyers or sellers for lieu of repairs?
Yes. So if I'm working with the seller, we get an amendment from the buyer that says, we want you to do A, B, C, D, E, and F. Then what I'll do is we'll come back to the buyer with an amount that will apply to paragraph 12A1B, closing cost, and do it that way instead of having the seller in the repair business. And then the buyer can do it at their, maybe a lot of the buyers can do the stuff themselves. If not, they can get it The buyer knows that what's being done, what they're requesting is being done properly because they hired the people. But they're always leery of
There's less moving components out.
there's
that
less
route,
moving components.
less
I do
involved.
remember the time that I went to closing and we had an amendment that said, replace the 1x4 at the columns at the front of the front porch and repaint. My seller did that. But the paint had aged over time, so it didn't match perfectly, and the buyer just blew a lid. And then my seller even blew a bigger lid. And he said, that buyer can just go to H. I don't have to sell my house. Just because the paint had aged and it didn't match perfectly. But we did exactly as the amendment asked us to do. So I had to calm my seller down big time because he was ready to walk. It's like, screw him. So I don't see that much, but just for me to negotiate, I would really like to see an exchange of money. Sometimes that's very difficult if it's a single woman who's got kids and she just doesn't have the time, or it's a single guy and they're just working. They may really push for those repairs to do. So in the amendment, I then put seller to furnish all paid receipts prior to closing to the buyer. And I've only in the last couple of years I've said paid receipts. Never had an issue with it, but I'd like to just see paid, that the seller paid for the repairs.
It doesn't necessarily have to be a licensed contractor or anything.
If it's electrical and plumbing, it has to be a licensed. But there's nothing about shingles. There's nothing about replacing appliances. So only those things that require a license in Texas.
Got it.
Okay. Any other questions on repairs? Okay. So on page 14, we're going to talk about preparing, presenting, and positioning. So in the preparing part, just again, knowing your goals. Where are we headed? We're headed to get this deal done for the buyer. We're done for the seller, and working with the other agent and working towards those goals and thinking ahead. As the third point talks about, thinking ahead of what if this doesn't happen, or what if this does happen. Know your client, and this is by asking questions. Learn the areas in which they're willing to negotiate. Closing costs, let's use that as the example. We know they've got some money in the bank. They've told us they'd like to get the seller to pay for their closing cost, but they have the money if need be. So set clear expectations. Just be clear and set those realistic expectations with your client. Under promise and over deliver.
Promise over deliver, yeah.
Yeah.
That's huge.
It is really huge.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
When you're showing a property, is it best actually not to follow your client around the entire place, because you might see something that you would have to disclose to the client, and knowing
If I'm effectively working for the buyer, I do want to know everything about the property I can discover to make them aware.
okay.
It's disclose,
exactly.
disclose.
Right, no, so
like
I wouldn't
I'll-
have anything to disclose if I didn't see it, is what I'm saying. So
Right.
you find yourself
Right.
like looking at certain
But
properties
to
and
a-
go,
But to effectively work for a buyer,
okay.
you see a
answered the
diagonal.
question.
You see a diagonal crack, say, coming from a window
Mhm.
that's hidden by a curtain. I actually go and I move curtains. I go inside closets,
Okay.
because if there's any foundation movement, the one place people don't fix is inside their closets. So I'm looking for things like that. If I see cracks in the brick, if I see that the AC filter intake is just filthy,
Mhm.
I'm going to say you're probably going to have to get the HVAC cleaned, or we'll have to get the seller to do that. So I'm working for that buyer to the nth degree, the best that I possibly can. I can't see everything. That's for the inspector. Even they can't see everything. But yes, I pointed it out to them. If it backs to Main Road, I say, guys, I'm your real estate agent for life. And I'm always looking at resale. This home backs to a major road, you're going to have a tough time. or the living room's too small. You know, and I always preface it by saying, I hope you guys don't mind my personal opinion, but I do give them. And they're like, but that's what we hired you for.
Mm.
So, be informed. Ask open-ended questions. I think the video already touched on that. Obey the law, and don't think I need to get into that. And again, as I mentioned, know your documents inside and out. The NAR stat is that 83% of buyers' most important thing is or very important, is negotiating skills. And know that negotiating skills is you're not born with them, you learn them. And as Josh said in the video, you'll learn more and more as you do these things and as you ask questions, and you'll get more comfortable with doing these.
The art, I guess, for a lot of real estate agents would be not attacking money, but using other resources and tools and ways to negotiate.
There is, and like I said,
That's
if someone
right.
calls me up verbally and wants to submit a lowball offer, that's why I say, go ahead and write an offer.
Mm-hmm.
Let's if your clients are serious about this, write an offer. I can't answer your question now because there's too many other things. Is the closing date in a week and they're paying cash?
Right.
Maybe so. Do they have another house that they've got to sell to buy yours? Yeah, probably not. You know, so I need to know. There's so much more that I need to know in that. So you're right. Closing dates are really important. Your option period. If I'm in multiple offers on the listing end, I will look at the down payments. If someone's only putting 3.5% down, but I've got other people doing 20-25%, well, they're stronger financially because they've been saving money up. It means they'll probably get the loan easier. Whereas these guys have only saved 3.5%. They may have more, but I don't know that. And they're asking for the seller to pay closing costs. So there are all kinds of different things within there. He's got to go at, you said 1:45?
1:30, 1:45.
Okay. So we're not going to do this scenario,
Okay.
but we're going to go ahead, page 17. So when you present, call the other agent. It's really interesting how many offers I get that I hear nothing from the buyer's agent. I got an email with, here's an offer for 123 Main Street, and that's it. I'm like, okay.
What do you mean you didn't hear from them?
They
Did you
didn't,
follow up?
they didn't call me and say, hey, I wanted to let you know that we sent an offer on 123 Main Street. Wanted to see if you had any questions for me. They just email it. Or they send me a text, say, hey, we sent you an offer. And that's fine. But I like to call them and be able to ask questions of them. See what's important, where's there some flexibility, so on and so forth. If you meet with them, I don't really see agents meeting much anymore because of emails and social media and text and all that. But if you do meet with them, it's really good because you get to see the nonverbal cues. You know, if they're like this, they're really closed off. You know, if they're like this, they're probably a more open person that's going to give you, you know, more answers to your questions. Keep quiet once you present the offer. Letting the other person do most of the talking is the most powerful negotiating technique there is. And I'll give you one. I love to talk. And there was some number of years ago that I had a client that wanted me to help his dad buy a house. So we found a house, put an offer on it. We got a counter offer back. So I called Michael, the son, and I said, hey, I want to let you know we got a counter offer for the property your dad wants to buy. So I told Michael what the offer was, and he's like, there's no way. He'll never take it. So I said, okay. So well, he said, call my dad. So I called his dad, and I can't remember his first name. And so I presented verbally over the phone the offer. And then I just said nothing. And he said, after a little bit, it was awkward. And he said, sounds great to me. And I was just floored. And then I called Michael up and I was like, Michael, he said, I'll take it. He was like, no. I said, yeah. So silence can be such a good thing. And it can be really hard to do.
It is.
It's, listen carefully to what's important to the other party. And I'm just in the firm belief of just asking, what's important to yourself? What's important to your buyer?
I would do that on the lending side after telling him how much it's going to cost or the
Yeah.
loan's going to cost or
Yeah.
something. And there was periods of time where what seemed like 5 minutes was
Mhm.
maybe only 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But it was the longest 30 seconds of my
Yes,
life.
it's awkward.
Because you want to say something. Are you okay?
Are you still breathing?
Right.
Stay calm and relaxed. We as agents, whether we're working with the buyer or working with the seller or the other agent or the appraiser, whatever, sometimes we get too emotionally involved, and we need to step back and just work as a professional. Have I lost it before? Yes, I have. And then I've had to call out and go, I'm so sorry. And agents have lost it with me. You know, it happens, but just try to distance yourself. A lot of agents are so focused on their commission that they lose sight of their fiduciary to their buyer or seller. Focus on the customer's needs. Don't think I need to. I think that's kind of covered in some of this other stuff. Give your offer the best chance. One of the things I like to do when I'm on the buyer's end is when I send the offer, I state, hey, I look forward to us being able to work together. Here's an offer that my buyers have asked me to write on their behalf. And here are the terms, and I just go over price, down payment, type of loan, closing date, paragraph 12A1B, earnest money option. But I give them the highlights in the offer. A well-written offer is a resume of your work to the other agent. So in the give your offer the best chance, be committed to your offer, but don't give the farm away. If an agent asks you a question and that silence is awkward, you're going to want to talk. Just say, I can't answer that question. So let's talk on page 19. There's some negotiating tactics that are used. Nibbling is one of those where the client or the agent is just coming back going, well, can I get this? And you go, yes or no. Well, can I get this? Yes or no? And they just keep nibbling. The way that you stop it is you start nibbling back. And it usually will stop it dead in its tracks. Hot potato. The other party tries to pass the problem on to you. For example, the other agent tries to pass all the closing costs to their client because their client can't afford. Well, again, you got to ask the questions, test the validity of that, and giving options. Well, how about if I give you my loan officer who may not charge an origination fee to help save on some of the closing costs to make this deal work? And then the good guy, bad guy. So when two people like a husband and wife are playing good cop, bad cop, and he's kind of the stern, direct, and she's the sweet, person, and they're tag teaming, good cop, bad cop. I actually did this one time with an agent on my team. I was trying to get some clients to reduce their price, and I couldn't get them to do it when I would ask. So we did an open house, Sarah and I, and so we had a conversation with my client, and Sarah played the good cop and I played the bad cop. And so I just went, you need to, I'm encouraging you guys, it's your prerogative, but I really think based upon the days on the market, the data that I've sent you, and the lack of showings, we need to reduce the price. There's no other function left. House looks great, location's great. There's nothing to change. It's a function of price. And I could just see the bristles going up with my clients. And Sarah could see it too. And she said, yeah, and by doing that, then you'll reactivate it in the MLS, then it'll go back out to, because there's a price reduction, a change in the listing, and it'll go out to all the people that the search is set up for. It'll kind of reactivate or put it in front of people again. And so we played that, and sellers went off and said, can we go talk for a little bit? I'm like, yeah, go on ahead. And they came back within minutes and said, okay. Like, couldn't get you to. So anyway, good cop, bad cop. And here it says that one of the things that you can do is you can say, come on, you're not really going to play the good cop, bad cop, are you? No, I wouldn't do that. That's a little bit too strong for me. And you'll find in your scripts that learn the scripts, but then you will then personalize the scripts to your own personality. And then on page 20 is positioning, this is moving both parties to a full agreement. So just acknowledge and affirm the common ground where the buyers and sellers are in agreement, are in the same position. Ask the what and how questions. I think that's the consistent thing. Ask questions. For example, if the seller wants to close in 30 days, but the buyer wants to close within 60 days, ask your client, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you're requesting a 30-day closing. What's important about a 30-day closing? And then, my goal is to let the buyers know why this point is important to you. So, positioning is a process. So sometimes several counter offers will be necessary to negotiate a deal. And I've had buyers and I've had sellers say, how many times can we expect this to go back and forth? And I'll say usually 2 to 3. If it gets to be much more than that, then we start getting a party that starts backing out, getting firmer in their negotiations, not budging, things like that, about 2 to 3 times. And know when to walk away. We touched a little bit on that earlier. So then on page 21, actually we're not going to do either one of the scenarios based upon our time, but you guys can do those on your own and think through those. So what questions do you guys have for me? That's fine, you don't have to have questions. What was the biggest aha you guys got out of this?
Obviously this information is valuable. The biggest aha moment is just with the follow-up and the asking
questions.
Asking good questions.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that concludes today's class.
That was easy.
Yeah, that was really easy. Thank you.
Where's
Where's that easy button?
Yeah, really. I kind of cut through the scenarios, which you guys can do. You guys are working on getting your contacts put together, and starting to let people know that you're in real estate, on social media, handwritten notes, Facebook Messenger, all of those ways. So, and you're having to, one of the things I'd recommend for you is to get involved in some organizations, maybe some nonprofits, civic organizations, chamber, something like that, to be able to meet more and more people. It's just getting your face out there as much as possible.
have that. We had a vision board. It was Friday.
Yeah, it was Friday.
Yeah, I wanted to
from
go to that
1
so
to
bad.
3. And for me, one of the big things I put on there was, just be able to navigate around Austin to every main city hub
Mhm.
without navigation.
Oh, that's hard.
Yeah,
You
I
always
mean,
need to sometimes take the back road.
yeah, you definitely do. I will tell you, when I was new, because I was nervous, what I do is when I would go show buyers, I'd actually go out, I'd get it all the tours set up, and then I would actually go drive the route before I actually took the buyers. What's really interesting now that I see is buyers hardly ever ride with me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my driving. It's just the nature of things. And I've talked to other agents because they've got their kids and people are willing to just meet you at the house and follow you.
Do you give them the
I love
option?
I do. Yeah. And I will tell you, most of them will say, we'll just meet you at the house and follow you.
Yeah.
Sometimes they just want to talk in the car about the
It's-
stuff
and
not
I
in
have
front
to
of the
tell you,
agent and other things.
For me, it works so much better if they're not in my car because, yes, I can talk, but I am worn out. By the time it's a couple hours has gone by, I'm worn out. Whereas if they're following me, I can think, I can focus on getting where I need to go and not having to dwell on conversations and stuff. Okay, guys, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
You are
Thank
so
you.
welcome.
Do you have a card?
I do have a card. There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, so anytime you got questions, let me know.
Appreciate it. Thank you.